guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. And in today's episode, I kind of want to touch on the LeBron James speaking out about the Kyrie Irving, because I'm a little late, but I just seen a clip of LeBron talking about Jerry Jones. And it's one of those things in which it's so interesting to me, because every time I see people in positions of power and high levels of influence, whether it be athletes or whatever, come out and they start to speak their truth. They start to advocate for Black people in the systems that continuously oppress Black people, regardless of your status. Not only do I feel a sense of unity and allegiance, but I feel so deeply compassionate for them, because I know that it is the system that still pays all of us, right? We don't control any money. And I realize the level of courage that it takes, and I realize the anxiety that it ignites in every Black person when it comes to educating our people and calling white people out on their racism and just the things that they do. It's so interesting too, because it's like, this is and it's so funny. I had to literally just explain this to someone. This is what racism is, right? So Kyrie Irving, the extreme measures that were taken out on him for sharing a video, all with the intent to educate Black people, versus Jerry Jones, we have deliberate actions. We have deliberate evidence of this person who was wrongfully intended, right? In the league that clearly has, like a little bit over half, if not Black athletes, right? And there's nothing said about it, right? It just goes away. Nobody talks about it. And this is what I say when I talk about the false sense of allegiance, right? When it comes to keeping white people comfortable, that's what it is, right? It's white people rallying together and they're not taking the same measures that they would for a Black person in an unreasonable situation. So one of the things I kind of wanted to touch on, though, is I think a lot of times when it comes to like LeBron James and a lot of people who have been able to amass wealth in America, the disconnect that I think that we need to kind of wake up and acknowledge is that this is possible. Like, this is possible for anybody, right? Because there is entrepreneurship, right? There is some level of freedom that our ancestors did fight for, and we were able to attain it and maintain today. So we don't have the same limitations per se, but we have to realize that this is done strategically, and it's oftentimes done through unity. LeBron says it all the time, and I think because of the lack of appreciation that is just so commonly found within the Black community for Black women, we don't really take heed to the message. But he says it all the time. I would not be the man I am today without Savannah James. I know people don't want to believe that, but I truly believe that if you have unity and you have a great woman by your side, I really do think it's possible for you guys to amass wealth. I do feel as though conversations around elitism and capitalism and all these different things, I really do think that this is a way for white people to try to dodge their feelings of discomfort and their inability to really kind of soothe and sit and process the emotions that they feel once they realize the premises in which America was built and the privilege that they have today, as well as so many of the people in their culture still committing these racist and just evil acts today. I don't think anyone's ever taught white people how to deal with the ramifications of that. And I think that's something to really sit with. Nobody has ever told white people, okay, let's sit and process, right? How do we handle these emotions when we look up and we realize we like our Black friends, right? We want to wear our hair in braids. We want to, do whatever to somewhat maybe emulate or imitate, rather, well, both, to be honest, Black culture, right? No one's ever taught them how to go about that, right? When you come into the knowledge of the truth, it's hurtful. And so I think a lot of times people online just want to try to identify with Black people, or maybe feel they don't really know how to handle the regret, maybe in the remorse that they feel for all that we have endured. And so I think a lot of times this comes out in this collective oppression in the form of elitism, right? In the form of capitalistic wars about certain things, right? And you have to realize that even at the basic level, white people are still given privilege. They're given the better paying jobs. Yes, they are. I've worked in jobs where I've seen a Black person working there for a very long time, hardworking, completely qualified, but they didn't get the position. And when you look at situations where you really get to the root and the fruit of it, and it's just due to them not being being white. I remember working in an environment where the trainer really significantly stressed the importance of not sharing salaries, and just intuitively in that moment I knew that was just because people were being underpaid, right? And so we have to really take that into consideration, and I don't think that white people know how to handle that. No one's ever taught them how to handle the fact that your granddaddy was a slave owner, right? Like, your granddaddy literally did this to Black people, and that's why we have this beautiful home. That's why we have these things. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of guilt and shame. And so I think because they've never learned how to deal with those feelings, what can we say, right? Like, I think that just from a African standpoint, we've educated white people so much. I mean, just from just ancient times and European cultures about nursing and hygiene and all of those things. And even at this point, we're still educating them today, right? In regards to health. I mean, we are the ones who are forging herbalism, right? Like, we're talking about herbs, we're talking about all these different things. They've replicated it, made it like CBD and all these different things, but even still to this day. And so I just think when you don't know how to handle that, we can't really address the elephant in the room. There can't be a conversation had about Jerry Jones because, that is how Jerry Jones felt. Even if it was one of those things in which, Jerry Jones was maybe taught to be this way. A lot of people wanted to try to exclaim that he was young. It was completely unacceptable because during that time, there were little boys who were playing with little white girls who were being lynched, right? So, again, just extreme racism, extreme measures taken, and it says a lot, it really does. And then this goes back into that, it doesn't really matter how much wealth you amass, right? So I want people to realize that, just because a Black person has wealth doesn't mean we need to exile them. That doesn't mean that we need to cut them out of our community. That doesn't mean that, they're a sellout, right? It's possible for anybody. And that's one of the things that I really do that's my thing, right? I want Black people to realize that it's possible for you, but you just have to realize that it's a system that's oppressing you. It's not it's not one particular community or one particular group or one particular, it's literally the fundamentals of a nation, right? And so that's the thing. And so it's possible to amass wealth. And I do believe that Black people can go a lot further if we would get in community with one another. Too often we are so fixated on just survival, which is unfortunate. I always say that when it comes to Black people, our deprivation, our dysfunction, I never look to Black people to say, you're the problem, right? I understand literally, I understand the precepts and the conditions we've been given, the hands we've had to play and the hands we've been dealt, so I don't look to us to say that this is the problem. And I think a lot of people want to try to capitalize off of marginalizations, and they want to try to point to the system that favors them, because they realize Black people are this, they're getting education, right? TikTok is a very interesting platform because it does allow people to be privy to certain customs and certain ways in the community, right? And so they realized this is cool, right? This is really cool. And they may have always known it was pretty cool, right? But it's now they want in on that, right? They want to be able to cash in on that. They want to be able to have a little bit of flavor, and so it's just, I don't know, you guys, it's something to think about. But my main point is, don't limit yourself. Know that it's possible, but also know that there is a system. So I think when it comes to freedom, that's a conversation for another day, and I think that's kind of where it goes back to me tying into my initial statement about LeBron and how just you can just kind of see in his body language how whenever there's a conversation about race and you have influence, you have power, and you are someone who has amassed wealth, it's almost like a risk that you take. There's so much on the line because you have to be very mindful of the verbiage that you use, because you have to tailor your message in a way that comforts white people. You cannot be offensive. You cannot, speak the truth blatantly. You can't speak it in love, to be honest. I mean, you really have to tailor it in such a way. And I think that, the way to go about it a lot of times is just to say less, but I see the anxiety, and I see the courage, and I see the trembling, that it takes to be able to come out and speak about these things. And so that's why I'm really big on just action oriented, like, type of things. I think once you reach a certain status, just start doing things, don't really, like just be a person of action and indeed. But I think it's possible, and I'm really happy to see Black men are waking up and getting married, choosing their Black queens to build and to create something sustainable and something beautiful that is a foundation that can definitely push us forward in terms of like financial resources, so that we will be able to give back and we will be able to educate and move further. So that's just great news. I'm really happy to see that. I'm happy to hear about that. But yeah, LeBron talks about it a lot, and like I said, I think just due to the disregard, the depreciation, and the lack of appreciation at this point of Black women in a lot of cases, just due to the media influences and just all those different things. When he says, I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for Savannah, we really kind of like overlook that, and we don't realize that, like, no, that's a real thing. You know what I mean? Like, that's real. He absolutely would not be who he is if it wasn't for Savannah. So relationships are powerful. They're very powerful. And I meet older Black men who feel like they have goals and they want to work towards things, and I'm not here to say that's not, you do what you want to do. But one thing I will say is, don't lose focus, like, in your individual pursuits. Don't lose focus. Like, have a sense of purpose in everything you do. Peace.